Richard Wayne "Rich" Mullins was an American contemporary Christian music singer and songwriter born in Richmond, Indiana. Mullins was best known for his worship songs Awesome God, and Sometimes by Step, both of which have been embraced as modern classics by many Christians. Some of his albums were also considered among Christian music's best, including Winds of Heaven, Stuff of Earth, The World as Best as I Remember It, Volume 1 and A Liturgy, A Legacy, and A Ragamuffin Band. His songs have been performed by numerous artists, including Caedmon's Call, Five Iron Frenzy, Amy Grant, Carolyn Arends, Jars of Clay, Michael W. Smith, John Tiss, Chris Rice, Rebecca St. James, Hillsong United and Third Day. Mullins is also remembered for his devotion to the Christian faith. He was heavily influenced by St. Francis of Assisi. In 1997, he composed a musical called Canticle of the Plains, a retelling of the life of St. Francis set in the Old West. Biography: Richard Mullins was born to John Mullins, a tree farmer, and Neva Mullins, his Quaker wife. He had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. The family called him by his middle name, Wayne, which he went by until college, when his friends called him Richard. Mullins grew up attending Arbor Friends Meeting, a church in Lynn, Indiana. The Quaker testimonies of peace and social justice later inspired many of his lyrics. Mullins was baptized when he was in the 3rd grade. His great-grandmother had taught him to play hymns in 4-part harmony when he was very young. He began to study classical piano with a Quaker teacher while in elementary school. An important part of Mullins' early musical experience was being the piano player, songwriter and vocalist for the New Creations Choir in Richmond, Indiana, which was started by Tim and Bonnie Cummings in the early 1970s. The choir toured numerous states in its own bus and even produced a record album. New Creations is a church and school for teens, and Mullins was a contributing factor in its beginning. From 1974 to 1978, Mullins attended Cincinnati Bible College. He worked in a parking garage to help pay for his schooling. From 1975 to 1978, he was the music director and youth director near Cincinnati at the United Methodist Church in Elanga. In the 1980s he moved to Nashville, Tennessee to begin his professional recording career. Mullins got engaged sometime between the late 70s and early 80s and had written the song Doubly Good to You for his upcoming wedding. However, his fiancée copyrightee broke off the engagement, after which Mullins wrote Damascus Road. Years later Mullins shared thoughts about his relationships and personal life in a radio interview with Rick Tarrant. "I would always be frustrated with all those relationships even when I was engaged. I had a 10-year thing with this girl and I would often wonder why, even in those most intimate moments of our relationship, I would still feel really lonely. And it was just a few years ago that I finally realized that friendship is not a remedy for loneliness. Loneliness is a part of our experience, and if we are looking for relief from loneliness and friendship, we are only going to frustrate the friendship. Friendship, camaraderie, intimacy, all those things, and loneliness live together in the same experience." In 1988, Mullins moved to Wichita, Kansas where, in 1991, he began pursuing a degree in music education at Friends University and lived with his best friend, David Strasser. As part of his degree program, Mullins served as the choir director at West Evangelical Free Church. While in Wichita, he also regularly attended Central Christian Church. He graduated with a B.A. in music education on May 14, 1995. After graduation, he and Mitch McVicker moved to a Navajo reservation in Tse Bonito, New Mexico to teach music to children. They lived in a hogan at the reservation until his death. The profits from his tours and the sale of each album were entrusted to his church, which divided it up, paid Mullins the average salary in the U.S. for that year, and gave the rest to charity. Mullins was also a major supporter of Compassion International and Compassion USA. His faith can be understood by a quote he gave at a concert shortly before his death. He stated that, "Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of these my brothers Euro unregistered trademark they done it to me. And this is what Euro unregistered trademark they come to think." that if I want to identify fully with Jesus Christ, who I claim to be my Savior and Lord, the best way that I can do that is to identify with the poor. This I know will go against the teachings of all the popular evangelical preachers. But their Euro unregistered trademark read just wrong. Their Euro unregistered trademark read not bad, their Euro unregistered trademark read just wrong. Christianity is not about building an absolutely secure little niche in the world where you can live with your perfect little wife and your perfect little children in a beautiful little house where you have no gays or minority groups anywhere near you. Christianity is about learning to love like Jesus loved, and Jesus loved the poor and Jesus loved the broken-hearted. Music career. Mullins had a distinctive talent both as a performer and a songwriter. His compositions show distinction in two ways: unusual and sometimes striking instrumentation, and complex lyrics that usually employed elaborate metaphors. Mullins did most of his composing and performing on piano and acoustic guitar, but he also had a prodigious talent for obscure instruments. He displayed arguably virtuoso skills on the hammered and lap dulcimers and the Irish tin whistle. Mullins formed his first band in 1976, a Euro 77, while attending Cincinnati Bible College. His musical career formally began with Zion Ministries in the late 1970s, where he wrote music and performed with a band called Zion. The band released one album in 1981 entitled Behold the Man. While working for this ministry, Mullins wrote a song called Sing Your Praise to the Lord, which was recorded by singer Amy Grant in 1982 and became an immediate hit on Christian radio. In 1983, Debbie Boone recorded Mullins' O Come All Ye Faithful for her Surrender album. In 1984, the song was also featured in a TV movie called Sins of the Past. In 1986, Mullins released his eponymous debut album, followed in 1987 by Pictures in the Sky. Neither album sold very well, but the Christian radio hit Awesome God on his third album, Winds of Heaven, Stuff of Earth, brought his music to a wider audience. The song Awesome God was written at a Christian camp, Rock Lake Christian Assembly, near Vesterberg, Michigan. In the early 1990s, Mullins released a pair of albums entitled The World as Best as I Remember It, Volume 1 and 2. These albums featured more of a stripped-back, acoustic feel than his earlier work, with nods to Irish music. Step by Step, a song written by good friend Beaker and included on Volume 1, and incorporated into Sometimes by Step with additional lyrics by Mullins on Volume 2, became an instant hit on Christian radio, and, like Awesome God, it became a popular praise chorus. In 1993, Mullins assembled a group of Nashville musicians to form a Ragamuffin Band, whose name was inspired by the Christian book The Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning. The band recorded A Liturgy, A Legacy, and a Ragamuffin Band, which was later named the number 3 best Christian album of all time by CCM magazine. Liturgy was a concept album that drew its inspiration, in part, from the Catholic liturgy. The Ragamuffins also appeared on Mullins' 1995 record Brother's Keeper. Mullins recorded a duet called I Believe with Hocus Pick on the album Brothers from Different Mothers in 1994. In addition to his vocals, Mullins performs on the lap and hammered dulcimers. In 1997, Mullins teamed up with Beaker and Mitch McVicker to write a musical based on the life of St. Francis of Assisi, entitled The Canticle of the Plains. Mullins had great respect for St. Francis, and even formed the Kid Brothers of St. Frank in the late 1980s with Beaker. On April 29, 2014, Mullins was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. His brother, David Mullins, was on hand to accept on behalf of the family. Death and Legacy. On September 19, 1997, Mullins and his friend Mitch McVicker were traveling southbound on I-39 north of Bloomington, Illinois, to a benefit concert at Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas, when his Jeep rolled over. They were not wearing seat belts and were both ejected from the vehicle. When a passing semi-trailer truck swerved to miss the overturned Jeep, Mullins, who was too injured to move out of the path of the oncoming truck, was hit and died instantly at the scene. McVicker was seriously injured but survived. His funeral was open to the public and had a massive gathering. He is buried at the Harrison Township Cemetery in Hollandsburg, Ohio, alongside his brother, who died in infancy, and his father. Shortly before his death, Mullins had been working on his next project, which was to be a concept album based on the life of Jesus Christ and was to be called 10 Songs About Jesus. On September 10, 1997, 9 days before his death, he made a rough microcassette recording of the album's songs in an abandoned church. This tape was released as Disc 1 of the Jesus record, which featured new recordings of the songs on Disc 2 by the Ragamuffin Band, with guest vocalists Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, Ashley Cleveland, and Phil Keaggy. Heaven in His Eyes was not a new song, but had been written more than 2 decades earlier, a beloved favorite of Mullins. Mullins' interest in St. Francis of Assisi led to an attraction to Roman Catholicism in his final years. There was no daily Protestant service on the Navajo reservation, so Mullins frequently attended daily Mass. He never converted, and there is dispute over his intentions. The year that he died, Mullins declared, in 1998, the tribute album Awesome God, a tribute to Rich Mullins was released, featuring favorite Mullins songs reinterpreted by his Christian music peers. Mullins' family founded the legacy of a kid brother of St. Frank to continue his mission to develop programs of art, drama and music camps for Native American youth and provide a traveling music school serving remote areas of the reservations. Color Green Films with Kid Brothers of St. Frank Company developed a full-length feature film, as well as a documentary, based on Mullins' life and legacy. The feature film, titled Ragamuffin, finished filming in October 2012. It premiered in Wichita, Kansas on January 9, 2014. Discography: Behold the Man, Rich Mullins, Pictures in the Sky, Winds of Heaven, Stuff of Earth, Never Picture Perfect, The World as Best as I Remember It, Volume 1, The World as Best as I Remember It, Volume 2, A Liturgy, A Legacy, and a Ragamuffin Band, Brothers Keeper, Canticle of the Plains, The Jesus Record. Awards. References. Further reading, Manning, Brennan. The Ragamuffin Gospel, Embracing the Unconditional Love of God, Smith, James Bryan. Rich Mullins, His Life and Legacy, An Arrow Pointing to Heaven, Mullins, Rich, and Pearson, Ben. The World as I Remember It, Through the Eyes of a Ragamuffin. External links, official website, audiori.net. Rich Mullins timeline, obituary at Catholic World News, Rich Mullins killed in crash, Rich Mullins dies in car accident, Rich Mullins at Find a Grave.